will record. Finally, another contest about Godzilla! And all his giant monster friends.
This could be the end of civilization.
Perhaps. So join your hosts, KES and Slick. Ladies and gentlemen, you are listening to the podcast.
From Odo Island.
Hey, welcome to the podcast from Odo Island. Follow us on Twitter at Odo Island Pod. I am KES, and with me as always is a man who plays Bing Crosby records at all his parties. So how you doing?
Oh, just that's what we play when we want to let our hair down a little bit at my parties.
Yeah, once you and Andrea go to bed, it's a different story. We take over and we start playing some modern rock.
Yeah, yes. That's a scene I look forward to discussing, and when we get to Nightmare on Elm St 2, Freddy's Revenge, later in this episode.
Yeah, that's the main topic of the ep this week. I'm forcing it on you.
It's part 2 of our Halloween episodes.
I feel like me forcing this movie on people is sort of in the vein of the movie itself.
I'll say, like in our personal life, a few people who were aware that we were doing this were like, "Oh, I'm really excited to hear you talk about that." And I was like, "So okay, so here we are." So, I'll save the rest of my background with the Freddy series when we get there.
Yeah.
So,
but before we get to that topic, we have a side topic too. I don't know if it's which one is the main topic and which one is the side topic. I don't know.
Double billing.
It's a Halloween episode. So we're also talking about the Godzilla and Godzilla Raids Again, the novellas that were translated into a book. So
yes.
We read those and we talked about that. But before we get to those topics, anything else happened in the world of the Godzillas?
The Godzillas and the Kongs, but we will build to old Kong.
What's Kong up to these days?
We'll get there. Starting small, we started to get a few teaser images revealed of the Netflix animated Ultraman movie.
Yep.
That is on the horizon. That looks kind of cool. I still don't have too much to say about it other than what I said. I don't know if I said in the podcast or I just said in one of our group chats. It gives me very much kind of like Across the Spider-Verse, Beyond the Spider-Verse vibes, the way its art style is, and that is a good thing because I really like the art style in those movies. So that looks cool. I don't know if you had anything to add to that.
No, I have nothing to add.
I was going to say there's nothing really much to add to that at that point. Good news for Godzilla fans and Beyonce fans. It has been announced that, first, the Godzilla -1 tickets for the release in America are going to go on sale on November 3rd on Godzilla Day. And there is going to be some limited early screenings in IMAX 2 days before.
Yep.
So
was it November 29th?
Something like that, yeah. It's like that Wednesday or something. So yeah, it's got to be the 29th or something. So better believe I'm going to try to get those.
All right.
I'll probably buy I wouldn't be surprised if I just try to go see this movie a handful of times. So as of this recording, there was an early screening premiere of -1 in Japan. The initial reviews have been that it is an instant classic.
They said it was as good as Bill Brasky's production of The King and I.
That's a good reference. Yeah. I always kind of take I hope it is an instant classic. But
it looks awesome.
It does, yeah. I just whenever I always think of when a new Star Wars movie comes out, no matter which movie it is, and this has been true since the prequels. Whenever a new Star Wars movie comes out, the initial knee-jerk reactions from people are everyone going, "Oh, this is the best since Empire." It's really funny that everyone just goes, "This is the best since Empire." It does not matter which movie it is. It will have someone saying it is the best since Empire.
I've literally never heard anyone say that.
Oh my god, it's sometimes if there was one night where I thought I had just manufactured this theory in my head, and literally I just couldn't do this with the prequels obviously, but every new sequel trilogy movie that came out, including Rogue One and stuff like that.
I guess maybe I heard it for Rogue One.
Yeah, every sequel movie came out, I would go into Twitter and I would go, "Oh, The Last Jedi, best since Empire. Rise of Skywalker, best since Empire." It was all people who like movie critics who got early screenings.
Well, Fred 45789242278.
No,
like,
these
maybe I don't trust him.
these were like the movie critics, like newspapers and websites that got like the early. These were like verified real people. You know, like
verification doesn't mean anything anymore.
I know, but this is in the before times. This is in the before Musk. The musky smell rolled in. But either way, but I even remember with like Clone Wars and like Revenge of the Sith, everyone's like, this is the best since Empire. Best since Empire. So either way, that was a long rabbit trail there. But I hope and I have no doubt that it'll be an instant classic. So it looks fantastic.
I feel like with Godzilla movies, people are usually they're either like there's not enough Godzilla or they're talking about the human characters. Those are usually the only two negative takes I ever hear about Godzilla movies.
Yeah. That seems to be accurate, yeah.
But yeah, I believe when people say like, oh yeah, it's going to be awesome. Like,
yeah.
There's no doubt in my mind because it looks too good. There's been more like trailers that were dropped. There's a shot of one of the spines on Godzilla's back, like
doing a little funky thing,
getting a little hard.
Yeah, it's. I was like, "What's happening there?" It's like I don't know. It's opening up or something. I don't know what's happening.
Something cool is happening. Something's going down.
But
I like how it's blue.
Yes,
I feel like blue is the most visually pleasing of all the glow colors.
Okay, yeah.
Because you've seen it with white, you've seen it with purple. The purple was pretty rad.
It was.
But it's better. It's like Mace Windu's
lightsaber. Yeah.
So it's like it's cool that it happened, but like keep it special and keep it just for him.
Yeah, I think the purple should always be like a Shin Godzilla thing. Yeah.
So that's my thing. Like I did like the purple, but and I liked it when the blue turned to orange in the Millennium series.
Oh yeah.
But I think overall the blue is the best.
I agree. It's classic and it's timeless and it's
can't go wrong. It's just visually appealing to me.
Yeah. So it just occurred to me that I think the advanced screening was on October 27th, with the actual movie coming out November 3rd, and that is very similar to what happened with the 1954 Godzilla movie. Is that they had one advanced screening, or at least one that I know of, maybe a little bit more. They did an advanced screening anyway on October 27th of 1954, and then like the actual release was November 3rd. So following in its footsteps.
Yeah.
But that brings us to Skull Island. The Rise of Kong has come out this week.
5 stars.
Yeah. Neither of us have played it.
Neither of us have played it, but I watched a bunch of gameplay for it. I will say this about the visuals. It's taken a lot of flack for the visuals. I don't mind it. It's fine for what it is. I don't know. It's pretty hard to make visuals like abhorrently bad, and these aren't abhorrently bad. They're just sort of like whatever.
I mean, I saw someone put it well when they said Kong has like golem eyes, and I was like, yeah, I can kind of see that.
I feel like that's like a weird graphics glitch, though. Like, I feel like there should be like a layer there that just doesn't
isn't there. So
because like there's a lot of visual like errors in the game, like the draw distance. Like I saw like stuff like coming in and out of existence, like bushes coming in and out of existence.
Yeah,
like background stuff coming in and out of existence, shadows flickering. Lots of weird, like you could tell this game was not tested much.
Oh yeah, it has released in like a barely functional state.
Yeah.
One of the clips that is one of the most ridiculous things I've ever seen in a video game is a cutscene where between Kong and some dinosaur character, and for whatever reason, like at one point when it cuts back to the dinosaur character, they didn't animate it moving towards Kong, so they literally just put up a still image, like a square boxed still image with a background that does not match the actual background that the cutscene is taking place in, with like sound effects layered over that, and then it cuts back to Kong, and then like the creature's back to being animated.
Yeah.
I've seen clips of like Kong getting stuck on textures and like floating.
Common stuff for games that use a lot of like AI to generate stuff.
Yeah, or just bad. I mean, just bad programming.
It reminded me a lot of the GTA Definitive Edition, like the trilogy Definitive Editions that came out, that they relied heavily on AI to generate stuff like rain and like effects and stuff. And since the AI just generates the code, nobody bothered to like look at it or test it or do anything. They're just like, yep, it's done.
Mm-hmm.
And so then they released the game and everyone was like, I can't see anything when it's raining out. Like the rain's awful.
Yeah.
And so like they like Rockstar, it was like Grove Street Studios that did these. So Rockstar had to like boot them and take over and start to like release patches to update it. And I think like half a year ago, they just gave up.
Yeah, this was done by a studio called Iguana Bee Studio. And one of their last major releases was also very panned. Not as panned as... There's a lot of places that are calling this like probably the worst game of 2023.
It's got competition.
They did a G.I. Joe game a few years ago, and I was like looking up some of the reviews of that. And it was very similar. It was just, bland environments, really buggy gameplay.
Yep.
Just, it's something says something about you when a lot of your major releases are licensed games that are budget titles that seem very unpolished when they get released. It says to me that like
that's a business model.
Exactly.
It's not a passion.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So but like that G.I. Joe game, from what I understood when it released, was $15. This is $40.
I thought it was 50 or 60.
I think it's maybe that's like a first week sale price, but I think it's 40 on most platforms. We had the PS5 one, I bet, is probably 50 and 60.
Okay.
So I'm thinking of like the Switch.
There's zero reason for this to be that much money.
Absolutely.
Like I there was like a full gameplay playthrough that was under 3 hours. Like
I read that
way.
I read that like the story mode is like very short.
Yeah.
So I don't know how much like truth there is to this. I saw this gaining a little bit of steam on social media that some of the dinosaurs may or may not be perhaps lifted from like an abandoned Jurassic Park game or Jurassic World game. But so now maybe they probably were able to obtain those. I don't know, but if you
already made the assets for it.
Well, they did not.
Oh,
they did not.
I thought maybe they worked on a game that got scrapped. Okay,
no.
Well, if they bought the assets though, if they acquired,
that's right. So
legally, then that's fine. If they stole the assets,
right? So that's not us saying that. That is that a number of people, and it's gaining traction, are calling them out online for that.
Placeholder graphics.
Yeah, we do not know that story, but that's just what some people are saying. So it's all allegedly.
Yeah. So like I said, if they bought them or if they made them themselves, that's fine. Whatever, reuse the assets. That's you're perfectly within your rights to. If you just lifted them though, like that's I'm saying I'm doing the naughty symbol, the international naughty symbol.
So we'll see. We'll see how that plays out. I mean, ultimately, I think this game is gonna just it's gonna have fun getting its like beatings this week, and then it's probably just gonna just disappear into the ether.
Yep, exactly. Yeah, that's exactly what's gonna happen.
I will,
or on the other hand, it could just become one of those games that's like in a year or two that they just stop making, and then like the physical copies go for like
$300. Yeah. If it dropped in price to $5 by Christmas, I would buy it, and I would take one for the team, and I would play it for Kong Christmas.
I probably wouldn't, from what I've seen. It just doesn't look like a fun game. Like there's a lot of platforming. I'll say this: they did a good job at giving Kong like multiple jumps and stuff, and like it looks like they tried to make it a fun action adventure platform game, but it looks like that's where like they stopped.
I almost like wonder if they reskinned like some other game and just put like
probably yeah because Kong does not look like a giant. He looks like he's about the size of like bushes and smaller than like small trees.
Did you ever watch like the Scott the Woz videos? But he does some like great funny videos and stuff, and he's done a few about like shovelware games, and like they're really funny. And there's like one studio that like kind of put out like these games that like you could get for like excuse me, the Xbox or whatever, like in like 7-Eleven or something like that for like in like a $2 bin, and like there's like 4 different games with like different themes, but they're all the same game, just reskinned. And so it's like it's pretty funny. I highly recommend watching Scott the Waz's videos. His videos are really, really well done and funny.
Okay.
But the shovelware ones are pretty good. So yeah, I don't know. That's it's out, and people are calling it the worst game of 2023, perhaps.
Because there is a Gollum game that looks pretty bad.
Is that out yet?
It's out. I've seen reviews for it and some gameplay, but I haven't played it myself.
Yeah.
It's more of a AAA title than this is.
Mm-hmm.
Better graphics.
Okay. I've heard of this.
Better graphics and stuff, but at the same time, it doesn't use any of like the Peter Jackson stuff. It's all just like its own Lord of the Rings.
Well, it's like this. It's like it's using rights that aren't MonsterVerse rights. Like there's so many different rights holders for different styles of King Kong.
And like there have been some really good Lord of the Rings games that do use the Peter Jackson style. Like maybe it's not like Ian McKellen as Gandalf, but like it's more like they do have like what's his name?
Isn't there like a PS2 one that's supposed to be like really, really
that's
good?
what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
There's one that has them all in there, and it's really good. So I don't know. I'm always wary of licensed titles, regardless.
Yeah,
I think like Spider-Man, you're safe, but other than that, you really gotta like do your research on those and watch like multiple reviews. Don't just watch like the IGN one, because you never know what you're gonna get. Watch like multiple.
Licensed games could be okay. It's when they're tied to a movie that it gets really, really dicey.
Yeah.
But
that's why I say Spider-Man. They're usually solid.
Yeah, even the movie ones generally have been good. I mean, Spider-Man 2 for like back in the day with like for like Xbox and PlayStation 2 and GameCube and stuff. That's actually one of like my favorite games.
I think that's one of the few games that is like worse on Xbox because the graphics flicker and stuff. For whatever reason, it doesn't jive with the system.
Yeah, I remember I watched like some sort of like a test between like all the different versions of the game, and it was actually the GameCube one was like the best performing.
Yeah, exactly. So there are instances like usually Xbox is the best because it's the most powerful and can handle the most graphics and stuff and all that stuff. So usually if there are multiple systems, the Xbox is the better one, but there are instances where it's not.
Yeah. And that was one of the times the GameCube got to beat the Xbox and the PlayStation 2.
But yeah, enough of our yakking about the old the video games.
Yes.
Do you want to talk about books or movies?
Let's start with some books, and then we will go. The world started with books and went on to movies. We will do the same.
What video games, books, movies in that order?
So, I'll set the table for this because I know you got a lot of table to set for the movie. So
I got some table.
Yeah. So we are doing like you said at the top, we're doing the novellas of the original 1954 Godzilla movie, as well as Godzilla Raids Again. These novels were both originally written by Shigeru Kayama. They were both translated, or the translation was helmed by Jeffrey Engels. So I'm going with pronouncing that.
Yeah, he's a professor at the University of Minnesota, and he's won like a bunch of awards for doing translations.
I have no ties to the University of Minnesota yet for some reason.
Or is it Michigan?
I don't remember, actually.
It was one of those two. Sorry.
But for whatever reason, I have adopted the University of Minnesota as my college football team, which...
You're a gopher.
If you... Golden Gopher. Yep. Just like Brock Lesnar. If you follow college football, it's not been a fun... It's not been a fun year.
I watch professional football. It's also not been a fun year.
I know. It's like I watch that on Saturdays, and then I turn on the Patriots on Sundays, and I go, huh. When does basketball start? Just in 1 week. Anyway, so so when the 1954 movie came out, there was more than one novelization. So there were two main novelizations. Both, and as we'll kind of get into it as we talk about it, were definitely not based on the final versions of the script. Same thing with Godzilla Raids Again.
Mm-hmm.
One of the novels is actually based on there was a radio dramatization done for Godzilla that was used to promote the movie. So I mean, it's how to approach this. I guess we can approach it as both as how do the stories work, but then also how does Yeah, I mean, I guess that's what it is. I guess we gotta. I mean, I guess I don't really have a way to separate out. So I guess I'll just kind of start, and then I'll kick it over to you. Like, I think it's very cool that this was done.
Oh yeah.
I think these are like, it's very cool to have these translated for the first time. You know, I think we'll probably discuss a little bit. Was it for better or for worse that it was such a literal translation? I think I lean towards, I think I'm glad it was a literal translation for the purposes of, you know, I guess history and kind of having, you know, I just think it's a cool little collector's item.
Yeah,
you know,
definitely.
That's my initial thought.
For me, because I did read some of the afterword, because I had some issues with the syntax and how literal the translations were. So
Yeah.
I did look in the back, and he says that he was like talking to like his students who were big Godzilla fans, so he was getting advice from them. He was also working off like the original writer's writing style,
Mm-hmm.
which had a lot of like nonsense words that were meant to like reflect sounds going on. So when Godzilla and Anguirus, he said he particularly said for Raids Again, Godzilla and Anguirus and Osaka was basically like pages worth of just nonsense words that were just there to reflect
Meant to be like
sounds.
roars and
And his students were like, yeah, it's kind of almost like a manga or a comic or something like that,
right.
in that sense. So it started to make more and more sense. But like, I really didn't get that. Like when I read Raids Again, I read that before I read Raids Again, and I was like anticipating like a lot of it. I really didn't see too much of that.
Yeah,
I think he did a pretty good job at like
yeah.
making it into a book.
Yeah.
That being said, there were spots where I wish someone stepped in more and rephrased some of the things just to make it a little bit more easier to read for me. Because there were times when like there's something changes, like a scene changes from one page to another in the same chapter, so you're anticipating a paragraph break, but there was no paragraph break, and but there's a page break, but there's no indentation and something like that. Like I sat on that for like 5 minutes. I was like rereading it. I'm like, why does it go from the boat to Emiko? Like, why is that happening?
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
and so there were other spots too where like random words were kind of not random words. I want to say, but like stuff that I probably wouldn't normally see in a book. Like there was one of the teenage sailors was saying like, I was totally scared, and it makes sense, but like I feel like in a book it should say like I was completely scared.
Sure, yeah.
Like
yeah.
it just feels like stuff that would be better to read than to say. Like there's stuff like that in there. So, but I think overall it is a task that I would never be able to do in a million years. Cause,
Sure.
like, I don't understand it. I feel like most people who learn Japanese, like they go into it thinking it's going to take them a decade to like really get good at it.
I mean, as one who's been doing it for several years, I feel like I'm better at reading than speaking, and I still certainly feel like it takes forever.
Yeah, so that's what I mean. Like, and I didn't ask you about this. I just like went online and like heard people said like, yeah, so maybe in 10 years I could be good at this.
Yeah, it's you know, I can certainly hold conversations, but you know, certainly it's, you know, my proficiency level is you know, on the lower end.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I feel like even for the amount of time I put into it. So yeah, I can only imagine like, you know, not only is he taking on a daunting task of translating both these two novels, you know, he is walking that fine line of like, where do I embellish? Where do I keep it like a literal translation? Or like, where do I like try to modernize it or something like that? You know, that's a tough spot to be in.
Yeah, no, totally. And so that's why I'm like very forgiving with it. But I'm just saying, like, as I was reading it, there was stuff that would like take me out of the immersion of being in the book,
right?
Which
yes.
is how I
Yeah.
usually read. I'm usually just like sucked into the book, like and stay tuned, and it's a satellite dish. That is an early '90s reference.
Yep, there you go. That was good. Yeah, it was. Yeah, you know, ultimately, I'm fine with it. I think now maybe it's a good time to pivot to like the stories themselves, which
Sure.
I think we can kind of discuss that regardless of whatever the translation decisions. I mean, the stories are still the stories, and
There are differences.
oh yeah, so particularly with 54, I guess I'll just say for sure, because
I definitely noticed a lot more with that one.
that is based on what was like an early an early version of the script. Like, it even still has the famous or infamous Godzilla first appearing with the cow in his mouth.
Yeah,
So
the cow in his mouth, he attacks the lighthouse.
there was one surviving photo of when they either filmed or at least tried to stage how Godzilla with the cow in his mouth would look. There's one surviving photo out there of that. So so that kind of shows like how early it is. And on top of that, I mean, like, the big thing is like there's no love triangle. Like, Ogata is effectively a different character in
There is, but there isn't.
Like, I don't even think they even allude to any romantic interest between Emiko and Serizawa. I think they're just friends, I think, in this. And Ogata is not interested in Emiko at all.
No, it's
Shinikichi.
saves her.
Shinikichi, yeah. He kind of takes the Ogata role on.
Yes. So it's common for this to happen. Like in the Attack on Titan movies, like certain characters were merged into one character, like multiple characters merged into one character. And that's how I viewed it. So I was kind of like, oh, okay, so they just changed that. Fine. Whatever.
I think this is just it was not developed or written yet, because this will predate the filming script.
Oh yeah.
So but what kind of stuck out to me is like what that was like. I was like, man, it was like when you actually kind of lose that love triangle subplot that they kind of had going in the movie, it's like it makes the story feel so much more bland and almost like a very generic, like Monster on the Loose story.
There were points, I just want to bring it back to my original point. There are points when it would be overly descriptive of, like, certain people, like there's a tall, slender man and a short, stocky man.
Yeah.
And like it's sort of, you get a picture of what these people look like. And then there's other times when it's just like Amiko's there.
Also, that reminds me. I don't think Godzilla is like ever really described in 54.
Yeah.
The 54 book.
He is kind of described in Raids Again. We'll get there.
Yeah.
But, there's one descripting factor that I'm just kind of like, huh? But like, yeah, Miko's not described at all. So the way I read it, Serizawa and Miko were still sort of like an item, but it just wasn't talked about in the book. That's how I approach it. So that's why I said there was and there wasn't a love triangle.
Yeah.
It just was kind of omitted.
I don't think, I mean, my read of it was, I just think they were just friends.
They were roommates.
Shinikichi was, but Serizawa
it's a joke.
but no, it's like, I mean, so as a story, it like, yeah, Godzilla's not really described in any sort of real detail. And that he's like when he's like attacking Tokyo, he's like constantly firing his beam.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh man, he's just walking around just constantly shooting it. So I don't think I have too much more to say on my take on the 54 one. I overall thought it was like,
I have one hot take on it.
Yeah. Good.
The Godzilla Appreciation Society.
Oh, yeah, that's a good point. I forgot about that.
So when they started talking about like the letters people were getting, I was like, oh, there's like an underground society of Godzilla worshippers. It's like that South Park episode where they're all Cthulhu worshippers. I'm like, yes, bring in the occult. Like, bring it to me. And what a letdown.
It was like one dude, and they find him,
and he gets trampled.
Find him squished. What a random little additional
it
detail.
Could have been so good. And I feel like Raids Again really missed the mark on like being like, oh no, it wasn't just him. It was like 5% of the population.
Yeah.
Part of the society.
Yeah, because when I first started reading this, I said, okay, I said like, it's like the love story is kind of dead, and like, there's no real it's like, oh, this could be like an interesting little addition, but that it kind of comes and goes kind of quick. So it made me really appreciate how good the original movie is when when I read a version of the story with so much either just not yet developed or removed. And I was like, man, it's like, this is just kind of like a generic story. Like, that was kind of my take on 54.
Yeah. Definitely the movie is like 1,000 times better in my opinion.
Yes. It just really appreciated that stuff. Anything else in 54 before we go to Raids Again?
No, let's go to Raids Again.
So I thought this was much better. of the two
Yeah.
for a read.
Shorter.
I guess. Yeah. Oh my god, it's like super short. It's like the two stories together are like 175, 80 pages or something like that. If getting back to like we were saying, like, oh, if like, you know, you maybe took some opportunities, kind of like if you wanted to have the literal translation, fine, but if like you wanted to revisit this project and kind of do like a modernization of it, like I could almost kind of see
all the time.
I could almost see like you could probably combine these two movies into like one like long story. And I could actually see like how it could be like kind of like well done. Like if you would have to obviously put all the different plot elements back in and expand on it, but I was like, man, if I was like reading these two movies as like one story and it was like kind of, the writing was kind of changed a little bit and like to be a little bit more cohesive, I was like, you could have a good little story there.
Is it the same Godzilla or do you do the two Godzillas?
No, I think you keep it as like there's two different Godzillas.
Okay.
Just as a yeah. I don't think I go with that.
For me, I was kind of like they should have resurrected the original Godzilla.
The original?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And just had him more scarred up, you know?
No, well, maybe, I don't know, maybe that happens in -1. No.
Kind of looks that way.
So, what it was interesting, because in Raids Again, like, I liked how there was like one part when the flares are going off and they say that like Godzilla's having flashbacks like to the nuclear bombs and stuff like that. That was cool. Anguirus still has his own fire breath in this one.
Yeah, I was going to say, so Anguirus has a fire breath, which I feel like should be implemented in Battle Line now.
It should, yeah. It was storyboarded in when they were filming or when they were working on Raids Again, but then it was abandoned.
Yeah. Also, Godzilla was briefly described standing on his hind legs.
Oh yeah.
Which I was kind of like, huh? Probably would have been something I changed, but neither here nor there. But Anguirus, yeah, he stands on his hind legs too and absorbs an attack and gets kind of crushed in a castle.
Yeah, the way it was described, it's like, and then he basically gets like kicked to death. Like, and then he gets like, blasted with the fire breath, but he's just like, he basically gets like kicked in the chest.
Yeah.
Like a bunch of times. He goes,
yeah, it was
then
a
he
drop
dies.
kick.
Yeah, he goes,
it was like a drop kick. Godzilla's standing on his hind legs, kicks Anguirus with all his might. Anguirus falls into the castle and eventually stops moving.
yeah. I was like, damn, fucking brutal. Kobayashi ends up being responsible for the fire, or indirectly responsible for the fire that lures Anguirus and Godzilla back to Osaka. Like, where in the movie it was like they're having like the chase scene or whatever. Kobayashi and them are like nowhere near this, but in this one, for whatever reason, he's taking part in the chase. So that didn't make any sense.
Poor Kobayashi.
Yeah.
Poor Kobayashi.
Yeah, that was a little. But his girlfriend actually kind of gets identified in the book. In the movie, it's just a picture of her. You don't really know her story. Not that you know much of it in this one. She just gets a little bit of a backstory.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I thought Raids Again was the better of the two. Still not still not the most exciting story. I mean, again, it is about 75 pages long. That's
it's short and sweet. If you're going to read one of them, I mean, you could really do it in the span of 2 hours.
Yeah, I was gonna say you could do the whole book in like just a couple hours.
I was like, you could, but like if you're a slow reader, I mean, like 2 hours should be plenty of time to get through all of Raids Again.
Yeah.
No shame in being a slow reader at all. That's why I bring that up. It's just to time keep it for you. Like, some people listen to this might not be avid readers and they might approach it and just be rusty.
Mm-hmm.
By the end of it, you could be going real fast. So it took me, I want to say about an hour, to get through most of it.
Yeah.
And then I just kind of flipped through the final two chapters, like one by one. Really easy read for the most part. There are times where the words kind of took me out of the immersion, but for overall, like, Raids Again was a lot more straightforward, and there was a lot less of that. So,
yeah.
Overall, I thought it was a great job, and like definitely an important part of the Godzilla history and the lore that I think everyone should I recommend this to everybody.
Yeah, I was gonna say I think this is like for fans. You know, I don't think
Everyone as in Godzilla.
Oh,
fans.
okay, yeah, okay,
not,
okay.
not like random person.
Yeah. I don't think there's any interest. I don't think anyone who's not a fan would have like any interest in this, and they would kind of walk away going, "What was that?"
No, I mean, like, if you're listening to this podcast, definitely read it.
However, there were some fantastic Godzilla novels from the late '90s, early 2000s that I would recommend to non-fans. Those were we'll do episodes on those someday.
Sure.
But those were fun reads. So cool. Yeah, there you go. There's our take in the book. Our first book report. Comics don't count. This is our first book report.
Yeah.
There were no pictures, so it counts.
No picture. There's a cover.
Yeah, yes. Well, time to go to movies.
Oh boy, I get to set the table. So before I set this table, I just want to give you my history on A Nightmare on Elm Street Part 2. Is probably watch it in earnest. Like, I saw it when I was a little kid. I remember probably like 5 or 6 years old. It was on TV. My mom was watching it, and so I watched it. So I didn't remember anything from it. So a couple years ago, I went through all of the Friday the 13th movies, and I was kind of like, it's still October, I want more. So I watched the Nightmare on Elm Street movies, and I watched the first one. I was like, oh man, I've seen that movie like 20 times. It's great. Then I saw the second one, and I was kind of like, oh, I remember the bus scene at the beginning. Yeah, and then nothing else. Okay. So I watched the whole else, and by the end of it, I was like, oh my God, I am a changed human being. But yeah, let me... So this is A Nightmare on Elm Street Part 2, Freddy's Revenge. I'm pulling it up right now.
While you do that, I'll nutshell this really quick. This is the first time I've ever seen this movie. The only other Nightmare on Elm Street movies I've seen, or Freddy movies I've seen, are the first one, an eternity ago, and Freddy versus Jason. Maybe I've seen Freddy versus Jason twice. I've seen Nightmare on Elm Street once. I'm not like big into like this genre, really.
The 80s slashers.
Yeah, they are totally a vibe though. They definitely have like, you know, certainly like a very unique look and feel to them that I think is kind of cool.
Well, this one is completely different from all the other.
Yeah, I just meant like 80s like slasher movies in general. They got like some sort of like that 80s aesthetic in them.
Yep.
Is such like a classic unique look. But anyway,
most of it is budgetary. This movie had a budget of $3 million and made $30 million. I believe week one it came in behind Death Note 3.
Oh, okay.
And then we'll pull that back up here.
What a week at the movies.
Try to get this down. What was it? Death Wish 3. It was
oh yeah, I was gonna say I was like probably a Death Note, but I was thinking
To Live and to Die in LA was also in front of it the second week, and then like the third week it got like another $1 million. So overall it made about $30 million on a $3 million budget. So I'm
actually shocked that Death Wish 3 was even making that much money. It was like, how fucking popular were the Death Wish movies? Like,
how about a cookie? This ain't over. Starring Mark Patton as Jesse Walsh. Mark Patton, we're gonna be talking about him a lot. Big player in front of and behind the camera in the story of this movie. His on-screen love, Kim Myers, was playing Lisa Weber. His friend Robert Russler was Ron Grady, and Marshall Bell was Coach Schneider. And as always, we have Robert Englund as the one and only Freddy Krueger. So I didn't talk about this movie a lot about like what the plot is, but basically the house on Elm Street where Nancy lived and won is where Jesse's family moves into in this movie. And the first thing that happens is Jesse's having these weird dreams about Freddy Krueger, and he doesn't know who Freddy is yet, doesn't know anything about it, but he's waking up in hot sweats and screaming, and there's a lot of heat going on in the house. There's heat issues.
Yes.
And so he's like always sweating, he's always naked, and he's always like hot.
Yes.
And one time he wakes up and he starts seeing a candle melted. And it's melted in a pretty peculiar way.
It is, yes.
All right, so you didn't know.
I did. Very quickly, I think I had heard a little bit about like I didn't know much. I just knew there was like something to like the background of this movie, and I was like, oh, I think this is like the one I've heard about that has like a lot of like a lot of real life stuff was kind of pulled into this movie.
Well, it wasn't real life stuff. It was perception. So basically, this is considered one of the gayest movies of all time.
Yeah, and that, but wasn't something with like wasn't Mark Patton, wasn't he not out and
Yes.
and like didn't he like I think I knew this because didn't he leave acting because of
Yes.
this movie?
So
Okay.
I was going to talk about that.
Okay.
Once we got into the like homoeroticism of the movie itself. So they casted him because he played a role of a gay man and something he did before this.
Yeah.
So this came out in 1985. So it was right around the time when like gay panic or AIDS panic was starting.
Yeah.
In like the later 80s. And if you know anything about like horror from the 80s, a lot of it is counterculture from the Reagan administration. A lot of like editing that was done to like make the movies viewable for the public, even though like the stuff that was edited out was more along the lines of like making horror kind of funny in a way.
Right. Yeah.
Because it's like when someone dies in a slasher movie, it's not supposed to like be like a gross out. It's supposed to like be realistic and then like also a little bit cartoony. And so like it's supposed to be kind of funny.
Right. Yeah.
But this movie, it's not really funny. It's kind of more serious. And so like the way I approached it was like this movie is trying to say like do a juggling act of like balancing like sexual identity with like moving to a new town and like relationships with the people you know. And it's supposed to be like a juggling act, but at the same time it's also supposed to be sort of like a like almost casting a light on something that was like sort of considered taboo at the time.
Right.
Now where Jesse comes in, Mark Patton, he's gay and he played the role of a gay person in the previous thing he did, so that's how we got cast in this movie, along with him being like sort of like smaller and more girly because they're called scream queens. And he's a male, so he's like a scream king kind of thing. But he's like almost in the girl role of this movie, like he's almost like the Nancy of this movie.
Right. That wasn't that like an intentional inversion, like, you know, they call it like the final girl.
Exactly.
And it seems like the story was, you know, now, fortunately, we have progressed quite a bit as a society. We still have much more to do, and at times we are unfortunately regressing.
Yeah.
But you know, at the time, like that is you know, that's quite like an inversion of the trope, like especially in the 80s.
And so that's why I mentioned that like horror was like sort of considered like counterculture at the time. It was still very popular, but at the same time it was sort of to run against what was mainstream of the time.
Well, that's like, sorry, like I don't mean to like sidetrack you, but like I mean I feel like horror even if you talk about like universal horror, you know, Hammer horror, like I think horror as a genre is like probably one of the best genres that is, you know, very good at like kind of holding a mirror up to society and kind of like really pointing out how silly like some of our like repressive sexual views are and stuff like that. Like, you know, like you think about how like, you know, Dracula is like has like a lot of like historically has a lot of like sexual, or vampire movies in general have like a lot of like sexual imagery and stuff like that. And you know, that's like, even though like I don't like slash movies because I personally just, you can call me Big Baby. I don't like jump scares, but like I will always say like horror is a great genre for kind of pointing out just like how silly our culture has been about how like we've approached sex and gender identity and stuff like that, and like how like, you know, we historically as a country have had like this awful prejudicial mainstream view of people's sex and gender identity, and I love that like horror will always kind of take the piss out of it. Like that's like one of my, again, not a genre I watch a ton of, but I love that like that's like a thing that it does a lot.
And that's what this movie really shines at. Like like when you're talking about jump scares, like I feel like a lot of modern horrors.
This doesn't have any. But
Yeah, a lot of modern horrors are just jump scares and have no depth and
yeah.
no characters to get behind or anything like that. It's just to momentarily scare you with a
Yes.
you know,
right.
it's like I don't whatever. But this is not that. This is more challenging the status quo, challenging the tropes and the norms of movies, and getting sort of like a little deeper into things that aren't talked about and that are taboo. Now, where Mark comes in with this and having an issue with this is that during the filming of this movie, they changed things. Like they kept rewriting the scripts and like changing things based on how he was acting and based on like how the movie was coming about.
Okay.
Like this is pretty common.
I didn't know that, but I almost feel like I feel like when we actually talk about the movie, I feel like I could feel that.
So this is pretty common in movies, but he took it as like the guy he was living with at the time was like dying of AIDS,
Mm-hmm.
and like there's like stuff going on in his personal life that's like bad news and like bad stuff,
Mm-hmm.
and like he grew up like in the Midwest and not Midwest, like in Oklahoma, so like you know, not the greatest place for a young gay kid. So he moves to New York and then he moves to L.A. and he's
Sure, yeah.
in these places that it's more accepting, and but he's still closeted, and the way he took it as like the filmmakers had power over him and sort of like made him do these things that he wasn't comfortable doing.
Mm-hmm.
But the way they described it as like the way the movie was coming out, we needed to make Jesse more gender non-conforming with how he was
At the time, yeah.
well, not with the time, but like with how he was approaching his fight against Freddy. Because at the beginning, he's playing baseball, he's wrestling with his friend,
Yeah.
and by the time he has to fight Freddy, he's like a little baby coward. He can't do it, and that's why Freddy's getting stronger.
Yeah.
But he perceived it as them trying to like out him and them trying to
Mm-hmm.
like make him out to be like this big prancing queen and
Mm-hmm.
and like it really wasn't, but like the guy who wrote the script like always said it was like the movie's not gay, it's just how Jesse was played. Like there was nowhere in the script to say scream like a woman. That's one of his lines.
No, yeah.
And so like there was sort of like bad stuff. It got worked out. They worked out their issues pretty recently, actually. But they always had like issues where like it was denied. And then like 10, 15 years ago, they all just admitted like, yeah, it's a gay movie.
Yeah.
Like that's what the point of it is. Like, there's also a scene in this movie where Freddy is going to insert his finger, like one of his finger claws, into Jesse's mouth at the beginning, where he like meets him by the staircase and he's like rubbing his claw in his face.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
He's like, "You've got the body, and I've got the mind."
Yeah,
He rips his head off, like the top of his scalp off. And Jesse's like makeup person like stopped the scene and like it's like, "Oh, we need to do makeup," and like pulled him away and said, "Don't let him put the finger in your mouth, because that'll be bad news for you. Like that could end your career and all this." So there's a lot of people in his ear and a lot of people influencing him. And so like I feel like he took things personally that weren't personal, and then they also started kind of doing things that were kind of personal.
And plus like he's obviously was struggling with his own know.
I think he was cool with who he was. He just was worried that like,
society
once everyone knows, he would be typecast and would never get any acting jobs. That's
but I mean, this is this isn't like, it's crazy. This is not ancient history. Like this is the 80s. And it's like, like the HIV epidemic is going on, and it's just like I can't imagine like the spot he must have been in, being someone who wasn't comfortable being out, and I'm sure it's just like it's just terrible that like people had to and still experience this stigma to like this day. It's just
But that's kind of all I really wanted to say about the background of this movie. So let's talk about like the movie itself.
Yeah.
What is your what was your take going into this, and then what happened while you watched it? Because I changed while I watched this movie.
So there were I don't even know how to start this, because it's like at times the movie felt extremely disjointed in a way that I thought was, at first I was like, okay, this is like intentional. Like maybe the whole, like I felt like some scenes were just so poorly connected to each other, or I shouldn't say poorly connected. They felt so disjointed going from one scene to another scene that I was like, is this entire movie the nightmare that he's living in with Freddy? And again, I don't know much about like the history or, you know, how people interpret these movies in that sort of sense, like, you know, like the grander story of like Freddy and you know, the nightmares and stuff, that it was like, no, this is like Freddy coming into the real world, and I didn't really know that he did that in movies. Does he do that in the movies, or is this kind of like a one-off?
So Wes Craven actually does bring that up.
Okay.
And so Freddy is most powerful in the dream world.
Yeah.
Because he could scare you and manipulate you there, and he has complete control over the dream world.
Yeah.
Whereas in reality, he has no control over what's going on. So in some of the movies, they're trying to bring Freddy from the dream world into reality. And in those movies, they succeed. And that's where Freddy is more vulnerable, and they can kill him or do away with him for the end of that movie's purposes, is a better way to describe it.
But so, like, all right, so he crashes the pool party.
That's what I'm going to get to. Yeah, when he crashes the pool party, Wes Craven's just like, yeah, Freddy's supposed to be, like, intimidating and overpowering, and then he's surrounded by these like teenagers, and some of them are like bigger than him.
Yeah, okay, yeah. He looks like a goof. He's like running around, and he's like, I was like, all right, there's like 50 of them, but he's like, and here's Freddy, just like all he's doing is like running around like flipping a table over. But it's confusing to me because like prior to him manifesting there, it's like, you know, he's like boiling the water like in the pool and stuff like that, and then like, you know, he's doing supernatural things. So that's kind of like, I was like, sweet, is all this like a dream? It's like this whole movie is the nightmare, and they're all caught in it. But like, it seemed like that was not what the intention was.
Yeah.
Like the actual intention in the writing and filming. And so it was like confusing to me. Like, was Freddy like in the real world committing the murders, or was, okay, so like,
when you see Freddy Krueger at the pool party, the people at the pool party are also seeing Freddy Krueger. They're not seeing Jesse.
Okay. That was like, I was like kept expecting that to kind of be like a twist, because like, you know, when he kills the gym teacher like in the shower, it's like Freddy comes out of like the steam, and then the steam kind of dissipates later, and it's like Jesse again. Yes. And I was like, oh, I was just trying to say Jesse did it. Like, you know, like,
well, it's true. He did it. Because Freddy's like sort of taking over for
him. Right. So that was like the parts that were like, it was like,
and I'm gonna get to that in a second.
So like the whole thing was like, I was like, okay, I feel like there's like cool ideas here, or the ideas that at least I think I'm having were cool, and then I'm like, okay, no, it's just like some like weird kind of unclear situations here playing out, and it's interesting when you said like they were like constantly rewriting stuff, and I don't know if it applies to this, but like, it felt like the movie was like, it felt like the movie was changing tone and paces like a lot.
Yes.
You know, like the scene like the birds explode and shit like that.
The drummer
like
for Spinal Tap, you mean?
Yeah. It's like, that is just so out of nowhere. Like, in terms of like what comes before, what comes after, like you could have just removed that scene. It would have no impact on the movie, it felt like. But
the purpose of that scene, like, and I agree, it could have just been cut, whatever, is to further highlight the troubles at home Jesse has, and how things that aren't his fault become his fault because there's no other explanation for it.
Yeah.
So that's why I feel like it was left in. It could have just been cut because it's so unnecessary and so weird. But it also plays into the fact that the house he's in has heating problems, and it keeps on getting hotter and hotter and hotter and hotter in there. And they're like, it's 97 degrees in here. I'm like, how are you sitting there?
Yeah, they're all like, you know, it's like 80s dad, like wearing like button-down shirt and like dress pants and all that, like all day.
But like, if you notice in the movie, like Jesse's like pretty much always just in his underwear.
Yeah.
Like when he's in his house.
Yeah.
Like he's all like, there's so many like mostly nude scenes of Jesse in this movie.
Yeah.
And it's just kind of
And
like
Grady.
oh, okay. Yeah.
Grady with the sweetest bedroom ever. Like the dude, but like also this is like I don't know how old they were at the time when they filmed this, but like this totally gave vibes of like, 25-year-old people playing like 15-year-olds.
Yeah.
Like, and so like when he like goes to like when he randomly decides to crash
It wasn't random.
oh yeah, I know. But it's like, I mean, I expect Grady might as well have been sleeping like in a race car bed. Like
Yeah,
it's like Millhouse, like he's got like these like weird, like they almost look like leather like sheets, but he's like in this like race car themed like bedroom. Everything is like red and like bright red and black. Like it's so 80s. I was like, oh my god. I was like, this is fucking hysterical from like an aesthetic point of view.
So when he goes to there, we'll talk about that because the scene that came before that, the director said he couldn't even like direct it because he was laughing at like the tongues.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Much. And so he had his assistant finish the scene because he just thought it was the funniest thing in the world. Like he's going down on this girl, and then all of a sudden he's got this big weird tongue.
Yeah.
But where was I going to go with this? So, swinging back to the gym teacher for just a second in that scene. So they're talking about like what a hard ass the gym teacher is, and like he's got the problems at home with dad, and he's got sort of like the man crush on his friend who he's wrestling around with. Who how are they even friends? Like they like become friends by fighting and doing push-ups next to each other, and then all of a sudden they're best friends.
Also, the fight between the two of them like totally gave me Shin Kamen Rider vibes, like because like all they're kind of doing is kind of just like
this was better than that
because they're just kind of like. They're not like throwing punches at each other.
No,
they're kind of like just like pushing each other over.
They're just wrestling around.
It's like 80s movie fight where it's like, yeah, no one really wants to throw any punches. Like they just kind of like
two men appreciating each other's strength.
Yeah, the whole thing is I don't actually like attribute that to kind of like the background of this movie. I think it was just like they just didn't really know how to like make a fight look convincing. And they're just like, yeah, let's just kind of shove each other, but not actually hit each other. I don't know. It was funny. It was like if that happened when we were in high school, we'd be like, this is the lamest fight ever.
Yeah. Oh yeah. But with the scene with the bird, like that's sort of like where Jesse's like, I've had enough. So he kind of leaves that night and goes out to the S&M bar.
Yeah. Also, the father somehow accuses him of blowing up the birds.
Oh yeah,
that he planned it somehow.
Because that's what I meant. Because that's sort of like the background into like the struggles he's having, where like he gets no release. Like he's having nightmares about Freddy Krueger. His dad's always giving him shit about unpacking his room and accusing him of shoving a firecracker up the bird's butt to make it explode. Jesse's telling the dad like it's not a gas leak. He's like, your mother smelled gas. What else could it be? So there's always this sort of like antagonistic relationship between him and his dad.
Yeah.
And so he gets no relief at home. He goes to school and he's getting in trouble with the gym teacher. He's falling asleep and his friend's putting a snake on him. Like he's got the girl there who he may or may not be into.
Yeah.
He hasn't done anything, and that's part of the conversations they're having. I was like, so you guys sleeping together yet? And it's kind of like, no, it's just my ride to school.
Yeah.
Like there's always like, so like I feel like Jesse just like can't catch a break, and then so one night he just kind of has enough and goes to the gay bar, and like he goes in and it's almost like this is where he should be, and then the coach kind of fucks him up.
Yeah,
know?
It comes
like,
out and makes him run laps.
Exactly. So
strange. Like
so the coach picks up his student at a gay S&M bar for, I mean, it is.
Well, he doesn't pick him up. Like, and he sees him there. He
grabs his arm and he smiles at him.
Yeah, I didn't. I mean,
earlier in the movie, there's a line where he says Schneider hangs out at like
the S&M bars. Yeah.
And he says like we're just his type. Like that's why he's so in. Like that's why he's like laser focused on these two. So that's why he brings it up. And then when he sees him there, he gets all excited and he's happy. He's like smiling. And he's like, go run laps. And so he runs laps and he goes, now hit the showers. That was his plan. So he takes him back and hits the shower, but this is where my theory starts to take hold. So Freddy starts to come out in here in the shower, and then when he's making out with the girl in the pool house, Freddy starts to come out a little bit, but he can't do it. So what does he do? He goes to his friend's house, and he goes there, and he transforms into Freddy and kills his friend too. Freddy Krueger is Jesse's boner. This is how this movie changed me.
Okay.
Freddy Krueger is the Matango of this movie. He is the metaphor for Jesse's like homosexuality. And so he can't do it with the girl, but he does it with two guys. And that's where I feel like that's where the homoerotic sort of like undertones are there. But like this is like the 80s, so it's like really like heavy-handed with it, so it's not like undertones at all. It's really like overtones.
Yeah.
But Freddy is Jesse's penis.
Okay.
Nothing.
No, I mean it makes. I'm like, no, I'm processing it. Because I guess like maybe I don't think of it so literal. I'm like, okay, he is his repressed sexuality.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah,
exactly.
So,
but for laughs, I'm saying it this
way. Okay, gotcha. so yeah, no, I'm with you that he represents his like repressed sexuality and stuff like that. So,
but if you notice at the pool party too, Freddy doesn't slash any girls.
That's true.
Mm-hmm.
Also, one of the few things I did read is like this is like the highest body count for like a Freddy movie, and I was like,
it's relatively low. It just sort of gets padded at the pool.
I was like, really? I was like, because it didn't feel like a lot of deaths, but then I guess with the pool, there's like a whole bunch that happened like in very comical fashion.
The thing about a Nightmare on Elm Street movies is that the deaths aren't the scary scenes. The scary scenes are the dreams.
Right, yeah.
Where Freddy is like stalking his prey and sort of getting them more and more scared so he can get more and more powerful.
Yeah.
That's sort of like where the Nightmare on Elm Street movies are at their best. The death scenes get better as the series goes on. The series is so different, like from here on out at this point. Like most people think part 3 is among the best. 1, 3, and Freddy vs. Jason are considered the best of the series, whereas 2 is mostly hated. Most people say they don't like this movie. And I couldn't disagree more. I'm like, this movie is so different. It's almost the Halloween 3 of this series, where it's like, there's no Michael Myers. There might as well not even be Freddy. You could name him anything else. Yeah. That's how different this movie is. The only correlation is that it's the same house and it's Freddy Krueger.
Right.
Everything else is different.
Yeah.
But overall, this movie is something that, like, I don't know. It just hits because there's so, like, the special effects I think are great. Freddy looks amazing in this movie when he pulls his scalp off and you can see his brain.
Yeah.
Like that stuff is just so good. Like there's a scene where Jesse's screaming and there's an eye in the back of his throat. Like the special effects where Freddy claws Snyder in the shower and you see the claw marks in his back. Like all this stuff is done 40 years ago and it looks
I
so
actually
good.
thought the best was when Freddy comes out of Jesse's torso.
Oh yeah, that's the best.
And then he shrugs off like the torso as he said. So I was like, ooh, that was pretty good.
Because I thought when I was first watching this that Jesse was dead.
I thought he was too. Because then Freddy's up and he's like, "Oh, Jesse's dead" and stuff like that. Then he's like inside of, like he's like still speaking from like inside of him and stuff like that. And then
you pan back and it's Jesse again, and he's just kind of like, "Oh my god!" So that's sort of like that confusion. I think is this of like what's going on with Jesse and Freddy. Like Freddy emerges from Jesse in the most violent way possible, and then like reverts back to him in like a
it's because like Freddy gets like burnt to a crisp, and then like Jesse then basically Freddy's burnt body becomes like a burnt outer shell that Jesse just like kind of comes out. Yeah, I was like, so when I watched that part, I was like, okay, now he's like really dead.
Yeah,
But then we get like. So we didn't really talk about the bus scene. You talked about you remember the bus scene.
Yes.
I'll say this: that bus scene in the beginning goes on for fucking eternity. eternity. I thought I was like, whew. But they were playing the credits over it, so.
I didn't think it was that long.
I mean, that was like one of the first things in my notes. I was like, oh my god! I was like, this scene just goes and goes and goes.
Do you notice who was driving that bus?
Yeah, it was
Robert Englund.
Robert Englund, yeah. And then, but I did like it. I did like it when they revisited at the end, and like his hand just like burst through the girl's stomach at the end, and I was like, oh shit, okay. So like, I was like, now I'm like, part of me was like, so now like they're in a nightmare. Like, is Freddy like now just gonna like do what he does and just kill these people in a nightmare? Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
So the first movie ends the same way. Everything works out and everyone's back alive and going back to normal. Like Johnny Depp was never pureed in his bed. He's there and they're driving to school and they put the top up and it's Freddy's sweater's colors and then you hear Freddy laughing. And then in this movie you find out that that stuff did happen and the kid's dead.
Yeah.
And like the girl Nancy went crazy. So that like the ending was a dream, and this I feel like it's the same thing where it's a dream, but like the scene at the beginning I thought was really good because like you see Jesse for the first time and he's sitting by himself, he's a loner, and I didn't really understand why he was on the bus because he has a car,
and he's also like he's got he's got his hair done different. He's wearing like a pocket protector and stuff like that, and then then it's like he wakes up from like the nightmare. And actually, he looked so much different in that opening scene. I almost didn't realize it was him at first. I was like, oh, okay.
So, I don't know if you noticed in the opening scene too, but he's kind of cowering behind this two scared girls.
Yeah,
and like trying to open windows, and he can't do it.
Yeah,
but like he's like using the girls as like a shield. He's George Costanza at a fire.
Yeah, it's setting the path for him for the rest of the movie. Although I did feel like his like characterization was kind of like all over the place, like sometimes, or not all over the place. Like I feel like you could tell there was script revisions going on because I feel like he's a little inconsistent in points. Like sometimes he's like at some points in the movie he's leaning a little bit more into having like he has a little bit more cowardly, or he's more like not like as outward with his personality, and then other times he's kind of like just like kind of normal like high school kid, and it's like and it feels like the scenes aren't filmed in order, I'm sure, but they were probably filmed at different points of times, like when the script was like going through like revisions and stuff like that. And so
I just assume all the high school scenes were done in like a couple days,
like one day.
All the house scenes were done in a couple days,
right? Exactly.
All the bar scenes, all that. But yeah, that's how I feel about this movie. I think it's really good. The special effects are sort of the highlight for me, along with the metaphors.
Yeah,
and I'm glad they got to like put it aside and sort of like celebrate this movie instead of like sort of like allowing it to be the black sheep of the series. Like own it.
Yeah,
it's a weird movie that belongs in it doesn't belong in this Nightmare on Elm St series at all because it's so different. It's almost like a Zelda 2 title where it's just like it's an island unto itself.
Yeah. It one random aside, it bothered me when the father called it methadone instead of methadone.
Oh yeah.
Also, typically not used for but it's usually used for substance use disorder or long-term pain management, or like it's a long-acting drug for pain, as opposed to a short-acting pain agent. But so it bothered me when he called it methadone instead of methadone.
Well, I think
that's very niche thing for me to get upset about.
The dad is typical dad.
Yeah,
like he's just a jerk and doesn't understand his kid and accuses his kid as being on drugs when he's not.
Yeah. When he gets like taken home by the cops, and he's like, "We can all go to bed if you just tell us what you're taking and who you got it from." I was like, "Oh god, that's like very 80s after school special."
Yeah,
shit right there.
But I mean, cops had their man and they just let him go.
I was just like, damn. I was like, this kid just got to get away with like all sorts of shit. But I mean, it's right after he commits the murder, right? Or he's around for the murder. So actually, you mentioned like Freddy or Nightmare on Elm Street 1 gets kind of that ending gets confirmed in this movie. does this movie get like referenced in
No.
3? Okay, like
No.
is this considered
is
part of the continuity?
Thrown away.
Thrown away?
It is completely ignored from this point forward.
Is this like the only one?
Yeah.
Okay.
Because Nancy comes back in part 3.
Okay.
And like her dad's in part 3. Part 3 is like has my favorite Freddy, Nightmare on Elm Street death. Freddy takes one of the kids' like nervous system and like parades him around the hospital like a puppet
Yeah.
and has him walk up a bell tower, and then he cuts the nervous system out and he falls to his death.
That's pretty good.
And it makes it look like a suicide.
That's
It is fucking brutal.
that's a clever one. Yeah.
There's part 3 has some great deaths in it.
Hmm.
But anyway, do you want to rank this?
Yes.
I want to hear your ranking because I want to hear the burial.
It's not a burial. I think what the movie is supposed to represent, and I wish I could rank it higher for like what I think it sought out to do. Unfortunately, I kind of feel like the actual execution of the movie was like just a little too inconsistent for me across the board, and it kind of distracted me a lot from the movie. Like it just felt like I said, I think I've referenced it a few times. It's like I feel like the tone shifts a lot. Scenes don't feel like they flow together very well. To me, like when I was watching it, it kind of took me out of it. And then I just couldn't really get over like Freddy like flipping tables at a pool party. When I saw that, I was like, what? So I mean, I was entertained through it because it is a weird movie. I think it feels weirder to me probably because of the like production behind it. Seems like it had a lot of stop and go moments, or not stop and go. It hit like a lot of like Rocky moments and stuff that impacted the actual final product, where it's like I thought they were setting up like some like really kind of cool concepts that actually they weren't. It just so it's I'm sorry to say it's a 2. It's a 2. Yeah.
I knew it was a 2.
I didn't hate it. Like, it's like it was interesting to watch. It was just I feel like it needs like I don't know if there is like I feel like this is a movie that if it had like a director's cut, something like that, or some way to kind of like just make it a little bit more cohesive, easily could be like a 4 for me or something like that.
I think if they lean more into Freddy taking over for Jesse and Jesse being like completely corrupted and became Freddy, and then his girlfriend became the antagonist about halfway. I mean, the protagonist about halfway through. I think you'd have a more solid movie. But for me, like for everything this movie like says without saying, and for how like at the time it was sort of like considered like undertones and like it's the Rob Halford of movies. So like looking back, like yes, we should have known that he was gay.
Yeah,
but we didn't know until later. So for me, this movie's a 4.
Mm-hmm.
There are better Nightmare on Elm Street movies, but this one kind of stands out like a sore thumb because it's so different and weird. I love the bus scene at the beginning when it's teetering on the rocks. Like that scared the crap out of me as a kid. And like Freddy doesn't even do anything. He's just like walking back very slowly to the end of the bus.
Yeah, just getting like the weight shifting. Yeah.
That always like I remember that from when I was a little kid watching it. Like that's a great scene. 4 for me. And like I said, most people feel the same way that you do about this. It's among their least favorites of the series. Most people like 3 the most. Some like 1. I kind of like Freddy vs. Jason the most, but that's just me.
Yeah, I like that one most. Like I said, I didn't hate it. It just I feel like with like a little polish, I would have liked it a whole lot more.
Yeah. Let's talk about purchases.
Yeah, I got 2, and they're kind of good ones. I got the Bandai Movie Monster Series -1 figure. I was not super impressed initially when I saw like pictures that when other people got it in hand.
Mm-hmm.
It kind of looked like a typical Bandai Movie Monster Series, where good, high on detail, low on paint. Having it in hand though, like it is, the paint is pretty well done. I mean, basically Godzilla is like his body is like totally gray, but there's a lot of like kind of like yellowish greenish highlights that I don't feel like showed up well in pictures. But
Okay.
again, the sculpt is fantastic. It's really not too far off from the ride design, as everyone has pointed out, because I think, also the dorsal plates are a lot different in kind of like how they're arranged, but there's subtle differences. But I think this is the ride and the -1 design. I think, like we said before, this is going to be Toho's like basic Godzilla silhouette, design, kind of like going forward. You know what I mean? Like it's going to be variations of this kind of design.
And I think it's a very good design, so I have no problem with that.
Yeah, it's not like too radical like Shin Godzilla was, like,
or Ultima.
Yeah, or something like that. Yeah, like this can be very much like it's like kind of more like a throwback to a little more classic Godzilla, but still with like updates to it. So,
and it doesn't. It looks like Legendary, but it doesn't at the same time.
Yeah, it's the bulk like Legendary does. Got like that big shoulders and kind of stuff like that, like Legendary has.
So I think it's a good companion for that one.
Yeah.
So that it's not like too close, but it's similar.
Yeah, this is like your all-purpose Godzilla.
Exactly.
Is what it's going to be. Like you can use this in all sorts of marketing and merchandising.
If they just straight up used like Legendary's Godzilla for this movie, I probably wouldn't mind that much either. I'd be like, all right.
Yeah, I like them both having their own identity.
Exactly.
Shin Godzilla was just so radical that it's like funny to me that there's like statues of Shin Godzilla like in Japan. To go like this thing looks like an undead zombie horrific creature with like a skull on the tip of its tail, and here it is, like this big statue in the middle of this public square.
Remember
in
what
Tokyo.
it was called? Regeneration. We all thought it was like Godzilla like forming into itself.
Yeah. Oh god, there was so many like wild theories going around. It was back then. It was Godzilla
Regeneration,
Resurgence or something like that. Yeah, I'm glad that even though like I'm sure like a lot of people like friends of ours like said to me like what the shit is Shin Godzilla? Like what does that mean? Like which now it's become much more common, but it's like it's just funny. Like Shin Godzilla was just such a radical design, and that was like Toho, like that was the Godzilla that was like the face of like the Toho output. Now you have a much more classical Godzilla. So
Shin Godzilla is almost like a tumor metastasizing.
Yes, like oh my god. I mean, Shin Godzilla is just so fucking good. But like, I mean, I will just never forget that moment when the Shin Godzilla trailer first dropped and we got like the full reveal of Shin Godzilla and me going, "What the shit is this?" I mean, it's awesome, but it's fucking insane. Anyway, so the -1 Bandai figure, it is not joining the figure of the year conversation.
No.
But it is good. It's just good figure.
I see Amazon having a ton of the Bandai Movie Monsters figures up for like $20.
Yeah, and then the US Godzilla store too is doing a lot of them for like that same price. So I'm sure there's gonna come there soon. So but what I'm calling the main event purchase of the week is I got the Titan Tech Rodan figure. The Titan Tech series is complete for now. Really, this line of figures is so fucking weird.
It is.
But awesome, but like weird. So Rodan is probably the best figure of the three when he's not transformed.
Yeah.
Like it's actually like it's funny that like this is like of all the. This is the first time Playmates has made a legendary Rodan figure is for this fucking line. But not really articulated though. It's like his like head can move and his legs can move. Other than that, like the wings don't move or anything like that. But when he's not transformed, it's just a very good legendary Rodan figure, or a pretty good legendary Rodan figure. I'm not gonna say it's the best, but it's pretty good. But but then he's got like gets a nice little Monarch like chest pack, and he's got like rocket launchers and hooks coming out of his like wigs and shit like that. Little disappointed that unlike Kong, he does not have a cool pair of shades that go over his face. That
Godzilla doesn't have them either. Keeps Kong special.
Yes. That will always make Kong, I think, the top transformed figure because Kong's got fucking shades. But what I thought was like really going to be like one of the dumbest toy lines that Playmates could have put out has ended up just becoming like just an unironic favorite.
I think this is a really good line for kids. This is.
I tell you, I don't see these in the stores long. When
they move.
Every now and then I see like one of the Targets around us gets like a bunch of these in, and like after a week,
it's been about a year since the Godzillas and Kongs have been there, so they move a little slower nowadays. But you see,
moved at a regular clip.
They get that sections get smaller and smaller and smaller.
Yeah, and I tell you, it's not common to see. A toy line like those Godzilla comic figures, like you said, they've been out like for about a year and kind of still getting restocked in Target. That's wrestling figures sometimes do that, but Star Wars doesn't do that. Like a lot of
it's usually like a month and a half.
Yeah, they're kind of cycled out, and that's kind of it.
Yep.
So no, these keep coming back.
Yep.
The new playset is out, but I have yet to see that. I'm not gonna I don't know. Once I see people, now that I've seen people get like the Hollow Earth playset, and assemble it, it actually does look kind of cool. But so I'm still not dying to get that one. But obviously, if I see it, I'm going to get it. But that one has eluded me.
Yeah, I haven't done any fig hunts in a while. No, I'm just resting on my my Nightmare on Elm Street Part 2 Freddy that I got. With the fire erupting behind him. He does have the brain exposed in his head.
Oh, he
under
does?
the hat.
That's pretty
And
good.
it comes with the dogs. We didn't talk about the dogs in that section. The dogs are the faces of Grady and Schneider.
Which I did not notice. He pointed that out to me.
And they're in the movie for about 5 seconds, and they don't do anything.
Yeah, but they look cool.
They're just there to look cool, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, yeah.
They're like Kong's shades.
80s practical effects in movies like that
so good.
Are fantastic.
Yeah.
Can't deny that.
But other than my my NECA Freddy, which I have staring at us right now, I don't have any purchases. I looked at they had the MonsterVerse Ghidorah for like $20, and I almost got it, but I decided.
Oh man!
I decided to save my money.
Sure, I understand. Well, so now this is the last week that we actually had to put any thought into content. Because we're pretty much good through April after this.
Yeah.
Because our next episode is going to be Godzilla Day and all its happenings. Right? Our schedule works out to be that way, yeah?
Yeah,
it does. Okay. Yeah. So anything you are hoping for on Godzilla Day? I mean, we already know we're going to get a Jet Jaguar movie. We already know... Oh, we didn't talk about this in news. The continuation of the Gemstone Godzilla Jr. series.
Didn't we talk about that last week?
Oh, okay, good. I'm glad we covered it.
Because we talked about Megalon.
Oh, okay, then yeah, okay, we covered it then.
He looks cool.
Yeah.
Let's talk about him again right now. Okay.
Yeah. I can't wait for I am pumped that Godzilla Jr. Gemstone timeline is going to continue.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
That's one of the best things that they've been doing. You said there was a Jet Jaguar. Is that the live action one?
Yeah, this was be, I believe this was be some sort of Jet Jaguar short. Very interesting to know how next year is going to go, because next year will be the anniversary for the first Godzilla versus Mechagodzilla movie. So, could get some wild stuff happening next year at Godzilla Day.
We could have a Mechagodzilla verse where the original Mechagodzilla and then the one from the Heisei era and then Kiryu all show up.
Right. I mean, the Gemstone thing is like effectively a continuation of the Heisei series, so you could get like that Mechagodzilla clash next year, which would be insane if that happened. Whatever team, department, person, whoever decided a few years ago that like all of a sudden like that Toho was gonna go like shithouse on Godzilla Day every year, like they deserve like the biggest bonus ever, because now like. Yeah, there's always stuff that like kind of marked November 3rd and stuff like that, but like now it's just straight up like, yeah, you're gonna get like just like fucking 14 hours straight of like reveals. In this year, -1's gonna come out in Japan on that day.
Yeah.
So it's just
last year it was announced.
Yeah, last year was announced, and just it like it has just really felt like a huge event for like the last few years now. It's so awesome. I'm sure we'll get lots of figure announcements. I'm hoping for a Singular Point Season 2 announcement.
Sure. Yeah.
I feel like if we don't get one on November 3rd, then I feel like that I would take that as like probably means there is not a Season 2 coming. But with how like topsy-turvy things are with like Netflix and stuff like that, like it wouldn't surprise me.
So I actually read somewhere today that Netflix stock is doing well.
Yeah.
And so like I feel like if the stock is doing well, they'd be more inclined to not cancel things to cut costs.
Yeah.
So I feel like there's probably a good chance for it.
Yeah, I feel like something happened to like their animation side of things like a year ago, or I don't know. I'm not really in the ins and outs. I just hope it just happens.
Yeah,
that's all. Just want it to happen.
I don't really have any expectations for Godzilla Day other than like, it's. I'm always looking forward to the Gemstone Megalon thing, and I'm looking forward to the live action one that they're going to do. It's almost like a lot to live up to for the past 2 years on that front.
Yeah,
but at the same time, like I think it'll be fine. I don't think that it'll meet or exceed everyone's expectations.
Oh, there's a Battle Lines summit that day too.
Oh,
so
Battle Lines is great. I guess maybe if you're gun to my head, what do I want out of it? Maybe like a companion movie, like a sequel to Godzilla -1, or like another Godzilla Toho movie being announced, something like that. Maybe incorporate more legendary MonsterVerse announcements into it if they can. I don't know.
I wonder what they'll do if they will promote like the
Give
Apple
me an
TV
Orga
show.
figure, actually. Give me an Orga figure.
Who I think it was Super Mechagodzilla won the Bandai contest this year. So that'll probably... Oh, no, that's already out. I forget who won this year. Yeah, I don't know. Probably going to be a lot of stuff coming. And then after Godzilla Day, then we got the Apple Plus series for the next 2 months after that. So, and -1, obviously, in there in the middle.
Yep. It's going to be interesting. So I think the series comes out on the 17th. So that should... So, like, our next podcast will be maybe a week or so after Godzilla Day.
We'll probably, I'm going to guess 2 episodes now, we'll be recapping the first episode.
Yeah.
And then it'll be like 2 episodes at a time after that.
Yeah.
Which will be good.
So it should work out pretty well.
Yeah. We're going to be your unofficial Monarch Legacy of Monsters recap show for a couple months. Till Kong Christmas hits.
Too hot to handle.
And -1, obviously. So, and then we actually really we have not discussed it offline at all, but mostly because I actually don't know if I can go or not. But November 1st, Godzilla 2000 in theaters around here.
I had news to me.
Oh, you know that? Oh yeah, no. Godzilla 2000 is in theaters on November 1st around here.
I'm going. Fuck it. Why not?
Yeah. I think I can go. Yes. This is great podcast content. No, I had some work things that were kind of in flux, but my schedule's becoming clearer. And I do not think I have anything I have to go do on November 1st now. So I should I think I might be able to go.
Jobs making people do stuff the day after Halloween. What a world we live in. Yeah. So anything else you want to give to the listener before we head on our merry way this episode?
Happy Halloween.
Tumultuous. Terrifying. So awesome it will shock you to the core. Beyond the unbelievable.